Hey everybody, Rosematter here, and welcome to part 7 of my Steins Gate Zero Let's Play. In the last episode, Okabe, he had Reading Steiner activated while at the Christmas party and saw a future where the Third World War happened, but things were different from what Suzuha was saying. Like, it seems like, you know, the war is still happening, Japan is under attack, but he, along with most of his friends, were taken by the Japanese government, and Rintaro specifically was handed over to the Americans because it turns out that he is not the only one who is having the Reading Steiner, but multiple people across the world are having the same visions and the same memories that he has. They were calling it, I believe, like the President's disease or something like that, and that includes Fubuki, because we know that she's been affected by this as well. So it turns out that the disease that's going around is actually like a global Reading Steiner that's happening to certain people. So after he came out of that, they went to go visit Fubuki. He confirmed that yes, she had the same dream, the same memories that he had. And then it ended with Suzuha pointing a gun at Okabe and actually shooting him because she said that, you know, they're out of time. She felt the worldline shift, and that means that the Russians are already working on their the time machine, or they have the time machine working, and they are currently messing around with timelines. So time is of the essence here. So she is feeling like she has to force him to do it, but Daru came in, put a stop to it. So now we know that things are like serious. We have a limited amount of time. I know I'm saying time a lot. Take a non-alcoholic drink every time you hear me say time. But things are dire right now, and it feels like we are at the precipice of something very bad happening. So we're going to continue on, and let's see what happens next. The next thing she knew, Suzuha was inside the time machine, wrapped up in a blanket. She must have been crying a lot, because she hadn't even noticed she'd come inside the time machine, or that Rintaro had left. Her dad was next to her. He was also wrapped up in a blanket, and he was looking at her. Oh, that's adorable. That is so oddly adorable. Oh.
今、何時?
She wiped away the tears as she asked. Sometimes you just need a cry and a warm blanket.
ごめん。こんな時間まで付き合わせて。
平気平気。前にも言ったっしょ。父さんのこといくらでも頼っていいのだぜって。
The time machine's hatch was still open, and cold air was pouring in. Each time they spoke, they could see their breath turn white. The machine was still silent. They could use the life support system in the cockpit to keep out the cold, but she didn't want to waste the energy. She rubbed her cheeks with her glove-covered hands. The gloves Yuki gave her were very warm, and her hands were the one part of her that wasn't cold.
僕さ、いつか必ずオカリンも僕らと一緒に、いや違うな。僕らの先頭に立って指揮を取ってくれるって信じてるんだよね。
Yeah, we just have to do, you know, like five run-throughs of this game, and then at the very end we'll get the true end where he's going to change his mind. He's going to go back and change it. It's just going to take another 20 hours at least. Suzuha was a little surprised to see Itaru speaking seriously. Normally, all Itaru ever did was screw around.
未来ガジェット研究所はオカリンがいてこそだから。今はちょっと腐ってるけど、きっと立ち直る。同時に法王院京馬も蘇るわけ。不死鳥の名は伊達じゃない的な、中二病オツ的な。その時が来たら、多分オカリンは自分からタイムマシンに乗るよ。鈴葉に言われなくってもね。
Suzuha realized Itaru was trying to make her feel better. Suddenly, deep in her heart, she felt a little warmer.
父さん、すごく恥ずかしいこと言ってるの、自覚してる？
うわ、ですよね。オカリン本人の前じゃ 口が裂けても言えないな。
私、明日までに手紙書くよ。オカリンおじさんに。直接顔見て話すと、また変な感じになっちゃうから。
Acting weird. aka pointing a gun at him. Not just pointing a gun at him, but firing a gun at him.
もうちょっとだけもがいてみるって。だからオカリンおじさんにも考えてみてほしいって。
Why do I have I have a feeling in this route Suzuha's gonna die. I don't know why I'm getting these vibes, but whenever, a character starts talking about how I'm not getting along with this character, but I'm gonna try and make things right, I'm gonna try and make it up to them, I feel like that's like a red flag that they're gonna die before they have a chance to do that.
そうは言っても、実はもうあんまり時間はないんだけど。
時間ないって？ロシアが実験を開始したから？
実はタイムマシンを制御してる量子コンピューターの内蔵電池、もうすぐ切れそうなんだ。
Alright, it's quantum computer, a computer capable of using quantum mechanical overlapping to perform parallel processing. While modern-day computers switch between two signals, 0 and 1, to perform their calculations, a quantum computer is capable of calculating these two signals at the same time. This allows for exponentially faster calculations to the point where it's expected quantum computing will change everything about the world we know. Practical quantum computers have not yet been built.
マジ？
前に話したよね。かがりを探すために1998年から何度もマシンを使ったって。それは当初の計画にはなかった行動なんだ。当然マシンを制御するコンピューターの使用回数も予定より多くなって。
それでバッテリーが消耗したっつうことか。
マシンそのものの燃料よりそっちの方が深刻なんだよ。マシンを正確に制御してジャンプさせることが難しくなる。
バッテリーだったら交換とか充電とかすればいいんじゃね？
無理だよ。
ちょっとだけその内蔵電池見させてもらっていいかな？
Suzuha nodded and pointed to a piece at the core of the machine. Itaro leaned his huge body forward to take a look, but soon he gave out a moan of confusion.
なんぞこれ。
He's like, what did I do? This is his work, and he's like, what the hell? The battery was the same size as a car's, but it was the product of 2036's technology, and Itaru lived in the year 2010. There was probably no way he could understand it. From Itaru's perspective, it might as well have been a black box of unknown technology. A quick look wouldn't tell him anything about how it was built or how it would work. That was one reason why Suzuha had agreed to let him look at it.
2010年の技術で何とかするのは無理だと思う。言うなればそれは使い切りの電池と同じ状態ってこと。充電も交換もできない。
この時代のバッテリーか発電機に乾燥するのは？
Suzuha shook her head helplessly.
とっくに試したよ。でも不可能だった。ルミ姉さんに頼んで車のバッテリーを用意してもらったんだ。トラックとかに積まれてる大きなやつ。繋いでみたら1秒持たなかった。
なんだと？
ガソリンを使う発電機も試してみたけど、それもダメだった。ガソリンが何ガロン必要なのか見当もつかない。だいたいそんな量のガソリンマシンには積めないし。ルミ姉さんね、ものすごく無理をしてくれて最新の燃料電池まで手に入れてくれたんだよ。
But even that wasn't good enough.
未来の技術ってすげえのな。こんな小さなものがそんな大電力を賄ってるっつうわけ？
I guess it would be like the equivalent of trying to play a game of this time on like a computer from the 70s. It's not capable of it. Eitaro was staring in amazement at the futuristic battery.
SF 映画みたく生ゴミを電気に変えられたらな。で、このバッテリー、あとどれくらい持ちそうなん？
多分あと1回か2回ジャンプしたらそれで終わり。
たったそれだけ？
しかもこうやってマシンが停止してる間もさ、重力場や座標点の計測装置なんかはずっと動いてるから、ジャンプしなくてもいずれ電池切れになる。
So they are running out of time. I hate to say it, but if Kagari hadn't gone with Suzuha, then she'd have at least more time and more potential jumps. But she's wasted all that, all the fuel and the battery trying to find her.
残ったバッテリーで正確なジャンプをするにはあと半年が限界だろうね。
That's actually more than I was expecting.
マキセ・クリスを救いに行けるタイミングもそこまでってことになる。
I was thinking like they'd have maybe a week or two. Suzuha grabbed onto Itaro's back and took a deep breath. It was squishy and it felt good.
バッテリーが切れてマシンのコントロールを失ったらどうなるんだろう。カーブラックホールの制御も効かなくなるし、イベントホライゾンの向こうから永遠に戻ってこられないとか。
Event horizon, also known as the Schwarzschild radius, a point past which no information can be transmitted. Information transmission occurs via light and electromagnetic waves, but the incredible gravity at the center of a black hole makes it impossible for even light to escape. The boundary at which this occurs is the event horizon. Anything that occurs inside an event horizon cannot be observed from the outside. Since no light can escape, the center of a black hole appears black. And a curved black hole, a black hole whose existence is predicted by current theories of physics. Unlike other black holes, the singularity at its center rotates. While other black holes have their singularities at a single point, the curved black hole's singularity is a ring.
縁起でもないこと言ったらダメだお。
あ、ごめん。でもそこってさ、どんな場所なのかな。今みたいに静かな時間が永遠に続くのかな。
She's just trying to keep... She's just really tired. It sounds like she's giving up. Yeah, she's just like, Well, especially she talks about all the stuff that she's been trying to do without anyone realizing it. She must just be so tired. And then to have the weight of the future riding on her, that's stressful. So I can see why she's in this time with her family. Things are normal relatively. And she's just like, I kind of just want to enjoy my time here before everything goes to shit. She clung to her father's warm back. Suzuha started to feel very sleepy. She let her guard down for a moment. She was sure to fall asleep. She'd been trained to fight it on the battlefield. But this wasn't the battlefield, and she was exhausted from crying. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad to let herself sleep in once in a while. She sat down and held her knees like a child, then softly closed her eyes.
そっか。結局鈴葉はこの夏までに必ず行っちゃうんだな。たとえオカリンがどんな結論を出すとしても。
Just before she fell asleep, she thought she heard her father talking to herself, or to himself. So that's our time limit. We've been given and established, like, this is when things have to wrap up. Maho's eyes were shining like a little girl's. It's nice to see them again. Like the last episode was just all about, the future and the whole thing with the war going on. So it's nice to be back with Kirisu and Maho. Not many girls would look like that if you brought them to a place like this. I was the one who brought her here, but she seemed to have forgotten about me entirely. She was wandering down the narrow corridors where all the computer parts were, as if in a daze. Then she came to a stop in front of one of them. Inside the shop were lots of little plastic bins filled with junk parts of all sizes. They'd been taken off of discarded PCs and appliances. Each of them was obviously dirty, and lots of them were covered in dust.
これ一体何の基盤かしら。まるで美術品みたいに美しいパターンをしているわ。しかもアルミナ基盤だなんて。
ああ。
IFX008 イメージセンサーですって。信じられない。博物館にあってもおかしくないものがなんでこんなところに転がっているの。
おお。
秋葉原、聞きしに勝る場所だわ。
Watching the ecstasy on Maho's face creeped me out a little.
真帆先輩は実はこういう人なのよ。
Kirisu spoke from inside my phone. Maho had said she wanted to go with Kirisu today, and so I ended up going on a strange date with 2 girls at once. This might be another test of Amadeus's capabilities.
俺もここは何度か来たことがあるが、あんな顔してパーツをめでる人間にはこれまで一人しかお目にかかったことがない。
And that would be her.
わかった。橋田さんのことでしょ。
ああ。
Oh, okay, never mind. I don't remember. I thought that she liked this stuff too, but I guess not.
さすがにあの人と同類扱いするのは先輩がかわいそうよ。あんたの話を聞く限りだと橋田さんってとんでもない変態だから。
そうだな。ヒヤジョさんに失礼だった。
It was early afternoon on a Sunday. There was a reason I'd come with Maho to the computer part shop. Dr. Leskinen and Maho were heading back to America in a few days. She was leaving soon, so she wanted me to show her around Akihabara like I'd promised. That's what her message had said. So we met in front of the station in the morning, and I asked her where she wanted to go. This was the result. By the way, our first stop was Yodobashi, and our second, Soft Map. I'd already taken her to a lot of used PC and retro PC shops tucked away in tiny alleys.
ヒヤジョさんはこういうパーツが好きなのか?
So if they're okay, so they're leaving in a few days, and then we've got until summer for Suzuha. It's like, feels like I know I've been playing it for a little while, and there's lots of routes, so that's what, that's why the game takes so long. Like the initial route's probably not going to be super long, but it feels like these characters were just introduced in the whole thing with Kirisu, and I feel like I barely interacted with them, and then they're going to be leaving.
パーツというか組み立てるものが好きなのね。子供の頃は日本製のプラスティックモデルをよく作ったわ。
Plastic model, a kit made from plastic parts put together by following a manual.
ゲルマニウムラジオなんかも
Oh my gosh. Germanium radios. A radio that uses a germanium diode as a rectifier and requires no power supply. This term can also refer to the kits used to build them. Since they're simple enough for anyone to build, they're a common choice for elementary school summer break projects.
ハンダ付けでよくやけどしたものよ。
Okay, then we got soldering. A mixture comprised mostly of lead and tin that is used to join metal components together.
私もです。みんな同じなのね。
Probably not, everybody. Actually, I'd assumed it was a minority of people who soldered in their homes growing up.
ずっと見ていたい。どうして私もっと早くここに来なかったのかしら。
It felt like she was never going to leave unless I dragged her out. I finally managed to succeed in getting her away from the part shop by telling her it was time to eat. This also seems a little bit too calm. Something's gonna happen. Maybe those guys will come back. Whoever that... Well, I don't know if it's a group. I'm assuming it's a group. I don't know about that dude with the gun who tried to kill us. And then, there was also someone who ended up killing him. I didn't even mention that before. So that person was trying to kill us, and then someone took him out, so they must have been aware of what was going to happen. So it's like somebody who's on our side, perhaps, or maybe someone just trying to silence him because he, failed at his job of trying to kill us. I don't know. This is definitely something where, this is a game where you have to play pretty much all the routes to really get a full idea of what's going on. We went out to the main road. This area was close to the station, so it was especially crowded. Thanks to the crowds of people waiting to cross the street, you couldn't even walk in a straight line. Now then, where to eat? My first idea was May Queen Young, but after the way she'd reacted last time, it was probably best to avoid it. Still, Sampo wasn't a good choice for someone new to Akihabara. Gonsen or maybe Kichinjiro? Go-Go Curry would work too. Go-Go Curry, a curry chain based out of Kanazawa, Ishikawa. It has stores all over Japan, but primarily in the northern and eastern parts of the country. It offers Kanazawa curry, which is famous for its thick roux and katsu and why did I say cabbage? Like cabbage. And cabbage on top. Kichinjiro, a restaurant chain found in downtown Tokyo, as well as Kanzai. It has a popular combo menu that offers a large amount of delicious food. In addition to the restaurants, it also offers a delivery service. Now, based on the fact it doesn't say fictional, I'm assuming that these are actual chains in Japan. As I stood there thinking, something's gonna happen, something's gonna happen. Maho stopped moving in front of the arcade directly ahead of us. Evidently, she was looking at the crane games on the first floor. Oh, never mind. She just wants to play arcade games. I'm still waiting for, like, the other shoe to drop. I'm waiting for something to happen to them. I nodded. I mean, someone was trying to take them out before. Maho walked up to the crane game and pressed her face against the glass like a little kid. Inside the glass were characters from @channel memes, all of different sizes. Maybe Maho was a secret @channeler, like Kirisu? They were pretty close, so it was possible. I leaned over to Maho and whispered a magic spell into her ear.
Nulpo.
Nulpo. Is that something from, like, @channel? Where, it's like people who know, they know. It's like if they're on there. Yep, old @channel slang. It started on the programming board as a shortening of null pointer, and as of now has no meaning whatsoever. Whenever someone says it, it's traditional for someone else to respond, "Gah!" Oh god, this is gonna age me, but I go on Reddit pretty frequently, and I've been going on there for a while. Like, I remember the whole thing about you're supposed to say to people out, out in the real world, be like, what is it? It's like, what time does the narwhal bacon or something like that? It's like, God, that was so cringy.
Hi?
I just confused her.
何そのぬっていうのは。
なんでもない。忘れてくれ。
Kirisu was glaring cold daggers at me from inside the smartphone, but I decided to ignore it.
ヒアジョさん、そのぬいぐるみ欲しいのか？
ええ、かわいいじゃない。ねえクリス。先輩？何？どうして慌てているの？なんでもないです。
What's that
ちょっ
about?
と意外だな。さっきパーツが好きって言ってたから、感性としては男に近いのかもって思ってた。
岡部、デリカシーないわね、あんたは。もっとうまいこと言いなさいよ。ギャップが素敵だとかなんとか。
あ、すまない。
いいわよ、別に。実はね、このぬいぐるみ、クリスがベッドルームに
Oh,
置い
that's
ていたの
why
よ。
Kirisu had like a reaction to it.
そうなのか？
先輩！
もしかして通販か何かでアメリカまで取り寄せてたのか？
別にどうだっていいでしょ。
さすが隠れアットチャンネラーだな。
何よ、アットチャンネラーって聞いたことない。
ヌルポ。
Gah!
か、
Gah! Even as part of Amadeus, she hadn't changed a bit.
ヒアジョさん、クリスはこれがなんていうキャラなのか教えてくれたか？
いいえ、何度か聞いてみたけど、永遠とはぐらかされたわ。
だろうな。
だからずっと気になっていたのよ。岡部さんは知っているの？
まあ。
岡部
A chill ran down my spine as I heard the angry voice from the smartphone.
俺も知らないんだ。
そう。
Sheesh, I defended your honor, Kirisu. You'd better be grateful.
ちょっと挑戦していいかしら。
Maho took her wallet out of her pocket and put a 100 yen coin into the machine.
このアームを左右と前後に操作してぬいぐるみをつかめばいいのね。
もしかして初めてなのか？
真帆先輩はレースゲームしかやらないですもんね。そういうこと。
Maho nodded and pushed the control button, managing to move the arm directly over her target. She smiled, satisfied.
簡単なものね。あとはアームが降りて勝手に掴んでくれるんでしょ。
あ、いや、普通はそうなんだが。
The arm went straight for the doll, but the angle was slightly off and it didn't grab it right. She's gonna waste all her money on this thing. Amazing. Ah, Maho, she has some cute faces. That's what happens your first time. Maho gave it several more tries, but didn't seem to get the hang of it. And then it's a whole thing. Once you do something like this, it's like the sunk cost fallacy. Like, the more you attempt and, like, fail, the more that you feel like you have to just dig your heels in and be like, well, I've already wasted all this time and money. I'm not going to walk away empty-handed. She groaned and took her last 300 yen to the back of the arcade. She walked over to a game with a red and white two-tone Formula 1 car in the side of the cabinet. She slid inside, still angry. I remembered that one was a CG racing game based off of real circuits.
Okabe. Okabe.
ん？なんだ？
ここは男らしさを見せるところよ。
男らしさ？
先輩の代わりにあんたがぬいぐるみを手に入れなさいっていうこと。
ああ、なるほど。
And then give it to Maho is what she was trying to say. Manliness aside, after seeing how badly she wanted it, I did want to try and help her. I took some coins out of my pocket and checked how much money I was carrying. Okay, it's been a while, but let's try this.
とはいえ、俺もこういうゲームは得意じゃないんだが。
Even so, I was sure I could do better than Maho. I wonder if Maho might see it as like an insult that he got it and she didn't. I may as well give it a try. Oh gosh, how long is this going to be going on for? This will just be the rest of the episode if it's anything like the few times I've played crane games. Ah, there we go. Oh, yep. And so after trying several times... whether it was luck or skill, I managed to get the stuffed animal easier than I'd expected.
Yes.
I stuffed it into a bag and went back to the racing game Maho was playing. For some reason, there was a crowd of about 10 people around it.
すっげえ、あの子何者だよ。俺に聞くなって。
小学生か？ありえないテクだぞ。これレコード出るんじゃね？
The crowd was whispering to one another. All of them seemed to be amazed. I made my way into the crowd and looked at the screen. The game Maho was playing was one of those where you had to clear each stage in a set time or else it would be game over. With each race, the course got more and more difficult, and she was placing first every time with ease. As the crowd watched in awe, she finally made it to the end of the last stage well ahead of the other racers, and she'd set a new record. She had a satisfied smile on her face as she looked at the flashy congratulations graphic on the ending screen. Then she noticed the crowd around her and her body jerked. An arcade employee walked over to Maho and started to clap. Then the crowd started to clap as well. Maho's face went beet red. I should probably help her. I pushed my way through the crowd and grabbed her hand to pull her up.
行こう。
はい。
I'd never seen her this obedient before. We made our way through the hustle and bustle and finally got out of the arcade. Maho sighed in relief.
うかつだったわ。
何が？
つい熱くなってしまって本気を出してしまったの。
これのせいか？
I handed her the bag with my prize in it.
何？
She opened the bag and took out the stuffed animal.
これどれなの？
運が良くてね。君にプレゼントするよ。
She's having a pretty dang good day. And I feel like everything's gonna start to go to shit soon.
いいの？
俺が持ってても仕方ない。
そう。じゃあ遠慮なくいただくわ。
Maho hugged the doll tight to her chest with the innocent smile of a child. Seeing how happy she was made me happy too.
クリスが亡くなった後ね、お母さんから形見をいろいろともらったわ。けどこれはクリスがとても可愛がっていたからってお母さん自分のベッドルームに飾っていたのよ。
If you didn't know it was from an at-channel meme, it was actually pretty cute. I could see her keeping it as a memory of her daughter.
だけどクリスの実家がね、ああいうことになってぬいぐるみも燃えてしまったと思うの。
Oh, she's probably gonna give it to her mom.
先輩だからこれはアメリカのお母さんにプレゼントしていいかしら？
もちろん。喜んでもらえるならそれが一番いい。
ありがとう。
さてと、次はどうする？他に見てみたいところはあるか？と言ってもアニメやゲームのショップなんかは興味ないよな。
Secretly, she's into that stuff.
クリス悪いけどしばらく
Or maybe she wants to talk about
岡部さんと
Kirisu a
二人
little
きりに
bit
してく
more
れる？
without her there. And Kirisu's like, yes, it's happening.
先輩、ついに自分の気持ちに素直になることにしたんですね。岡部、ちゃんとしなさいよ。
はあ？
先輩、頑張って。それじゃあ。
ヒヤジョウさん？
行きたい場所もう一つあるんだけれど。
Oh, I wonder if she's gonna want to go to the radio tower, the place where Kirisu died.
そうか。どこだ？
Is it someplace she didn't want Kirisu knowing about?
あそこよ。わかるでしょ？
Yeah. The smile was gone from Maho's face. She looked like she'd come to some kind of decision. And then I realized where she wanted to go.
ラジカンに連れて行って。
A radio building. And she wanted me to take her there. I understood immediately, because that was where Kirisu Makise had died. Well, so much for our happy fun day. I'd gone up to the roof several times since then. The time machine was there, and Suzuha and Daru would go up once in a while to do maintenance. Just a few days ago, Suzuha had called me out there and pointed a gun in my face. But even so, I'd never been to that storeroom on the 8th floor where it had happened. I couldn't bring myself to do it. Just remembering what happened was enough to cause a severe flashback. There was no way I could visit the site of her death.
大丈夫？ずいぶん顔色が悪いけれど。クリスのこと思い出してしまうの？
そうだろうな。
辛いならついてこなくてもいいわ。私一人で行くから。
But her face was colorless. Going there had to be hard on her too. But even so, she was trying to come to grips with Kirisu's death. I wanted to help her remember our friend. The radio building was going to be renovated. There wasn't a lot of time.
いや、一緒に行くよ。
Half of the shops had already been moved to another building to make way for the renovation, but many of the shops on the 7th floor were still open. Six months ago, on July 28th, I killed Kirisu on the floor just above where I was standing, with my own hands.
ここなの？
いや、事件があったのはこの上の階だと聞いている。
I wasn't supposed to have been at the scene of Kirisu's death. I'd already asked Mayuri and Daru not to tell anyone.
上には何が？
イベント会場と、あとは倉庫とかになってる。
行ってみてもいいのかしら？
今は立ち入り禁止のはず。
But the rope that always blocked off the way to the 8th floor wasn't there today. I could hear loud voices and laughter from above. Since it was a day off, there must have been some kind of event going on upstairs.
大丈夫そうね。
Maho headed up the stairs first. I slowly dragged myself up the stairs. We passed by the event hall and into the back. It looked like there was no one around. Nothing had changed in 6 months.
ここだ。
There were no lights on, and the place seemed dark and lonely. This time the storeroom was locked.
そう。こんな場所で。
I could see her lips trembling as she whispered. It seemed strange. This was the place where Kirisu had died, covered in blood, and yet nearby the rest of the world continued on like it didn't care. And now I'd come back, even though this was where the one I loved had died.
もどかしいわ。私は物理学者ではないから相対性理論のことを詳細に理解しているわけではないけれど、時間と空間が同列だというのなら、なぜ空間と同じように時間も容易に移動できないのかしらね。今私たちは空間的にはクリスの死と同じ軸上にいるのよ。なのに時間軸がほんの少しずれているというだけで手出しすることすら叶わない。
I wonder if some point Okabe is going to tell Maho about the time machine, because like he brought it up to her, right? He asked her about like, what do you think of time travel?
あなたこの前クリスにアマデウスの方だけど。
Oh, that's right. Okay, yes. Sorry, he asked Kirisu, not what her thoughts were about time travel, not Maho.
タイムマシンは作れるかどうかって。
ああ。
ぜひ研究してみてほしいわ。真っ先に私が友人テストに名乗り出るから。
I couldn't tell from the tone of her voice if she was serious or joking. She laughed sadly. Time machines are real, you know, and there's one right above us. What would she do if I told her that? Would she blame me for giving up on saving Kirisu and say she'd go back to the past herself?
岡部さん、クリスが亡くなった時の状況について教えてくれない？私、詳しくは知らないの。
俺だってろくに知らないよ。前にそう話さなかったか？
でもアメリカにいた私よりは詳しいでしょ。クリスはどうしてこんなところに来たのかしら。クリスが死んだ時、すぐそこのイベントホールでは今日みたいにイベントが行われていたそうね。
We could hear the occasional sound of laughter coming from the event hall.
中鉢博士、去年の夏ニュースになった。ロシアに亡命してタイムマシンに関する論文を書いたって。その論文の内容はそれはひどいものだったらしいけれど、ただそれでピンときたのよ。 アメリカのクリスの家に放火した連中もロシア語を話していた。これ偶然かしら。私は何らかの関連性があると思う。だから中鉢博士について調べようと思ったんだけど、不思議なことに驚くほど情報がないのよ。
So she doesn't know about the fact that Nakabachi is Kirisu's father.
中鉢博士について言及しているブログやサイトを見に行ってもほとんど閉鎖してるわ。しかもこの半年ほどで立て続けに。ねえ、一体クリスの周りで何が起きていたの？もしかして今もまだそれは続いているの？あなたは何を隠しているの？
Her eyes were pure and sought the truth. Kirisu used to get that exact same look in her eyes all the time. But
好奇心で足を突っ込まない方がいい。俺はもうたくさんだ。
今更だわ。私は片足を突っ込んでしまっているのよ。
and actually, I could see Maho probably getting killed too, and maybe the more people around him die, maybe that's going to convince him to go back and try one more time to save everybody.
それに考えてしまうのよ。この前襲われたのももしかすると私のせいじゃないかって。
君のせい?
No, because she's getting into that stuff. So maybe it's a similar, maybe this Kagari girl who's now grown up into an adult, and she knows about Suzuha trying to change the past. Maybe it's like a situation to, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on her name. The one who is the rounder. The girl with the glasses. What is her name? Why? She was there for 5 seconds at the very beginning of this game, and she hasn't popped up since, which itself, I don't know if that's suspicious or if she truly is in this world line. She's just a journalist. But anyway, if maybe it's a situation where like she is trying to stop all this from happening. Like she's trying to stop Maho from finding out the truth. She's trying to... If that's the case, if you're trying to stop this from happening, you should be going after the Russians. The Russians are the one with the time machine.
狙われる理由があるのか?
私は
And then she paused for a moment.
私はクリスの遺産を持っている。
I wonder if Maho is going to get killed right here in the same place Kirisu got killed. Belongings? Some of Kirisu's belongings. What did she mean? Maho had said that after Kirisu died, she'd gone to her home in America and received some of her belongings from her mom. Was she saying now that the attack was because of that? My mind began to race. Russia. Where Dr. Nakabachi had sought asylum. The people who attacked Kirisu's home spoke Russian. And just a few days ago, the Russians probably had experimented with changing the past. Suzuha had said the World War III would be set off by the time machine. The time machine? Nakabachi's paper? The paper he'd written about the time machine. The cause of the Third World War. A miraculous, nightmarish paper which would cause the deaths of 5.7 billion people. Because in the Steins Gate world line, his paper got like burnt up or something. So like all of that was lost. So no time machine happened. All was good. The time machine he discussed at his press conference was a ripoff of John Titor's. But the one in his paper was different. I never managed to read it though. But my guess was Kirisu had shown him the original she'd written on July 28th. His paper was an inferior copy. Kirisu had written down instructions for making a time machine. I shuddered. I quickly booted up the Rhine program on my smartphone. So that's what happened is, yeah, like that's what set all this off is, in this one, Nakabachi managed to get Kirisu's paper, go to Russia, and then they're working on the time machine. I paged through my chat logs. Oh yeah, there's that whole thing about Daro trying to break into Kirisu's, her laptop. That's right. That hard drive and the laptop contained the data for the original version of Nakabachi's paper. Maybe Kirisu's paper. Be funny if her password was that thing that he said, the @Chandler thing.
ノート PC とハードディスク。
Oh, did Maho give that to Daru? No.
まさか
Oh
あれ
shit.
の解析を依頼したのは
Shit. She didn't meet Daru, but you know, they probably don't actually see each other face to face. I looked at Maho, or she just didn't know because Daru goes by like a, you know, another name. She looked back at me without smiling. And she nodded.
ええ、私よ。
From Maho's perspective, there was too many things about Kirisu's death that didn't make sense. Maybe that was why she decided to look into why Kirisu was killed. Of course, she'd assumed there were hints hidden inside her laptop and hard drive. But if my hypothesis was right, that laptop was too dangerous to be allowed to exist. It was Pandora's box, with the power to unleash the Third World War. A box given to mankind by the gods in Greek mythology. We were told never to open it, but a girl named Pandora let her curiosity get the best of her and opened it anyway. The box was filled with disasters, all of which was unleashed upon the world. It is said one thing that remained in the box was hope.
どうして隠していた？
最初はあなたと橋田さんの関係を知らなかった。
Okay, so she did know it was Daru.
橋田さんに頼んだのは本当に偶然よ。そしてあなたはクリスのことについて何か隠しているように思えた。そんなあなたに正直に全て話せるわけないでしょう。信用していないというわけではないのだけど、クリスのことについては慎重になった方がいいと思って。
ああ、それについては正解だよ。アマデウスのテスターになることを反対しなかったのもそういう打算があってのことか。
打算なんて言わないで。私はただクリスの友達であるあなたのことをもっと知りたかった。
クリスの秘密を手に入れるために。
あの子のことをもっと知りたかったのよ。
She glared right back as if challenging me.
ダルはもう解析したのか？
He's like, I'm gonna take my stuffed animal back, thank you.
まだよ。だからアメリカに帰る前に最後にもう一度あなたと話をしようと思ったの。
So that's why she brought me here? I need to call Daru right now. Okay, so I know that I gotta do that. That's... or I have to answer the phone on the 23rd. But let's say it first.
Hi, もしもし。
今ラボにいるか？
いや、
じゃあどこにいる？
家で絶賛エロゲ中。どうかしてん？
Oh, is he actually... are they at the radio tower right now? That's wild if they were just upstairs and he had no idea.
お前の裏のバイトの件で話がしたい。
あ、あれか。なんかマキセ氏の情報を思い出した？
ああ。
Of course, that was a lie. He could be in danger if I didn't get that laptop back right now. I glanced over at Maho.
じゃあさ、LINE で送ってもらえるかな？
直接会って話をしよう。ラボで合流できないか？
今手が離せないから夕方でもいい。
Is he actually tied up right now?
エロゲなんて後でいくらでもできるだろう。
さあせん、家でエロゲしてるってのは嘘。実は今バイト中で手が離せないんだよね。
A tip for my bad, often used as part of the phrase LOLOL, my bad, LOL. While theoretically an apology, it is more often used to provoke or annoy someone.
バイト？
Well, I was lying to him too, so I didn't really have room to talk.
じゃあ本当はどこにいる？手が離せないならこっちから行く。とにかく今すぐに話したい。
あんまオカリンには教えたくなかったんだけどな。やばげな仕事も多いから。まあいいや。わかった。これから言うところに来てよ。
Oh, I have a feeling that somebody's tapped my phone and they're gonna meet us there. The location he gave me was still in Akihabara. It was less than 5 minutes away. Down an alley, a few turns off Main Strip, all the hustle and bustle of the crowd completely disappears. We were on the 7th floor of an old mixed-use building. We were in Akihabara, the center of Tokyo, in the middle of the day on Sunday, and still the alleyway we'd come in seemed lonely and abandoned. There we found the shop Daru had told us about. There was a cute anime-style sign on the steel door that read, "Cosplay Media at Akihabara. We're open. Come on in." Okay. Mairi, I'm out shopping with Luca. Do you want to join us, Okabe? Sorry, I'm a bit busy right now. I'll say bit busy. Send. Send. Oh my gosh, why is it not sending? There. What happened? I'm about to have a bit of a long talk. With who? Daru. It's not something we can let a girl hear. I'm a guy, though. I can't let you hear it too, Luca. You're too kind. It would knock you out cold. Huh. Okarin, don't do anything too weird. But you haven't done anything like that lately, so it kind of feels like old times. Sorry. Ask me another time. No, sorry for bugging you. Talk to you later. Bye. Farewell. The store was jammed full of cosplay outfits. A wall near the entrance held the new arrivals corner and popular cosplay sections, as well as cosplay wigs, ribbons, jewelry, and props. The other wall held the used outfits section and a shoe section stocked with socks, school shoes, heels, and boots. Even further back, I could see rows of school swimsuits and competition swimming outfits. It looked like the place sold mainly to girls, but this clearly wasn't a location where women would feel comfortable. The other tenants in the building were all shady shops with names like Drops of the Spirit God, Space Radio Receiver Sales, and Flower Petal Video Project.
君はここには来たことが？
いいえ、前に会った時は別の雑居ビルだったから、同じような怪しいお店だったけれど。
そうか。
I felt like I'd seen Daru's dark side. The shop was completely silent. There were no customers other than us. There was a thin man with long hair at the counter who looked like he worked there, but he didn't even raise his head up from the magazine when we came in. To be honest, ever since I'd entered, I'd worried someone would think I was up to something illegal, especially bringing like your little lolly girl with you. Anybody who saw me would think I was a pervert taking a middle school girl to a shady cosplay shop.
Oi, Okarin, kochi!
Daru appeared from the back of the shop. There had been no sign of him a second ago.
つうか、真帆たんも一緒だったんだね。
その真帆たんというのやめてくれないかしら。
なんで？かわいいじゃん。
バカにされている気分だわ。
そんなことよりダル、お前どこから出てきた？
The man at the counter hadn't said anything, which meant they knew he was here.
とりあえずこっち。
Daru headed to the back of the store. One of the rows of hanger racks holding idol cosplay outfits was pulled forward, and behind it, I could see a curtain. Past the curtain was a tiny space that led to a door marked staff only. If the hanger rack hadn't moved, I'd have had no idea this was here.
まるで忍者屋敷ね。
Damn, pretty good setup. Behind the door was a cramped office. Well, no, the room itself may have been pretty big, but the darkness made it feel very cramped. It was honestly hard to breathe. There were 4 desks in the center surrounded by metal racks. The desks and floor were piled high with all manner of computers and peripherals. There were boxes and bags littered everywhere. I couldn't tell if they were trash or not. There were towers of magazines, games, plastic models, and figure boxes. And the desk was covered in garbage, just like the one at the lab. It was too dark to tell, but I was sure the figures he had on display were covered in dust. And what did he need 6 monitors for anyway? Each of them displayed an image of the store. Evidently, it was footage from a security camera. Given the size of the store and the lack of customers, even 3 cameras would have been too many.
ま、適当に座って。
座れる場所なんてないぞ。
今スペース作るを。
Daru kicked aside the boxes on the floor to make room, then set down 2 folding chairs.
お前この店とはどういう関係なんだ？
バイトリーダーみたいなもんかな。結構こういうアングラな店のバイト掛け持ちしてるんだよね。でさ、たまに事務所を個人的に使わせてもらってるわけ。
裏のバイトのためにか？
そういうこと。
Maybe there was a lot more to Daru than I thought.
ここにあるものは全部お前の私物か？
いや、他のバイトのみんなとの共有財産的なやつ。さすがにこんなにたくさん買えるほどお金持ってないし。
Or so he said, but who knew if that was true?
Huh?
Nope. Amadeus. Amadeus, Amadeus. Alright, so we gotta answer this call.
なんだ？
あんたまだ真帆先輩と一緒よね。
ああ、一緒だが。
どうかしたの？レスキネン教授からたった今聞いたんですが、和光市のオフィスが何者かに荒らされたって。
え？
あと真帆先輩のホテルからも連絡が来て、そっちも誰かに侵入されたみたいです。
なんですって？
すぐにレスキネン教授からも連絡があるはずですけど、少しでも早く知らせた方がいいと思って。
Hopefully Maho... Does she have the stuff from Kirisu? Does she have it on her person? Because if she had it at the hotel or at the office, it's probably gone now. I wonder if the only thing she really had that was of importance was the laptop that Daru has. That's what they're looking for.
ありがとうクリス。ヒアジョーさんのことは俺とダルで見てるから大丈夫だ。
そうね、頼むわ。それじゃ。
Maho looked down and bit her lip.
懸念していたことが現実になったな。狙いは間違いなくクリスのノート PC とハードディスクだ。
え、マジで？
場所を変えた方がいいかもしれない。
ここは安全だと思うけど。
なんとなく嫌な予感がするんだ。勘みたいなものだ。
Yeah, bad things are gonna happen. Plus, there's a thing that Daru sent the address out to Okabe, and I feel like someone's gonna intercept that information. It could be on their way right
わ
now.
かったお。
それでノート PC とハードディスクはどこに？
Daru sighed and grabbed a locked fire-resistant case off one of the racks. He opened it. Is that where he hid it? The laptop was a deep red Japanese model with a 12-inch LCD screen. The hard drive was American, from a brand known for equipping its drives with a shock-resistant rubber case.
それを持って急いで出よう。
Both Maho and Daru nodded silently. As soon as we left the building, I could see a car coming down the empty alleyway. It was a big American RV. We quickly hid ourselves in the shadow of another building. My intuition was right. The RV stopped in front of the building we just left. 3 men came out. None of them were Japanese. They were all dressed in black suits, almost like MIBs. Men in Black, an American urban legend, it is said that they are secret government agents who appear without warning before UFO witnesses or researchers to put a stop to their activities. It's not known whether any such secret agency actually exists. The name comes from the fact that they dress in all black and wear sunglasses. A movie of the same name, based loosely on the urban legend, helped popularize the idea. Whatever they weren't Akihabara tourists.
間一髪だったな。
Maho went pale when she saw the men go into the building. Well, she's not going back to America, because if she has, like, that trip planned, they're going to intercept her. She seemed to be shaking a little, too.
こんなのまるで映画の世界だわ。とても現実。
でもさ、あの連中は店の情報どうやって入手したんだろう。
誰がヘマしたんじゃないのか。
僕を誰だと思ってる？
スーパーハッカーだろ。
ハッカーな。 足はつかないように注意してるっつうの。
または俺とヒアジョーさんが尾行されてた可能性もあるが、
怖いこと言わないでよ。
和光市のオフィスやホテルだって荒らされたんだ。ヒアジョーさんがずっとマークされていたのは間違いない。
あ、そうだわ。
Mo seemed to suddenly remember something. She took out her smartphone and made a call.
教授に連絡しないと。
今日はどこかに身を隠すと伝えておいた方がいい。教授と合流すると教授にまで危険が及ぶかもしれない。
Maho nodded. Ah, this is Ferris's place. Rintaro took Maho to Ferris Nyanyan's home. It was on the top floor of a high-rise building in the center of Akihabara. If nothing else, it was sure to be more secure than the ancient building they'd just been in, and nicer too. Ferris welcomed the two of them, offering them food and a place to sleep. Daro returned alone to the future gadget lab to meet up with Suzuha.
このノート PC は存在するだけで災いを呼ぶだろう。手放した方がいい。
Once they'd both calmed down, she started to talk to him about what they were going to do with Kirisu's computer. He didn't budge an inch. Usually he was an introvert who never pushed too hard for anything, but this time he was extremely stubborn. Of course, so was Maho.
せめてロックを解除して中身について確かめたいわ。今のところそれもできずに手詰まりだけれど。
そんな悠長なことを言っている場合じゃない。今すぐ手放すべきだ。一番いいのはこの場で破壊することだが。
破壊するって、これはクリスの形見でもあるのよ。
君はもう少しロジカルな人間だと思ってた。
私はあなたがそんな冷たい人だとは思わなかった。
Mao's words made him flinch. Something bad had happened to him. That's how it seemed to her, and it was easy to assume it had something to do with Kirisu. So she decided to ask him what she hadn't gotten to earlier, during the fuss this afternoon.
あなたはクリスの事件について何か隠しているように見えるのだけれど。
俺の知ってることなんてどうでもいいような話だ。
Maho could tell he wasn't going to share. If they hadn't been interrupted this afternoon, would he have told her?
それよりこの PC をどうするかだ。これはもう友達の形見なんていう私的なレベルのものじゃない。国家規模での争奪戦を引き起こす代物なんだ。
一体どんな陰謀論よ。
It's Okabe's like first time. he's so used to this at this point. He knows exactly what to do. He knows Maho couldn't be with a better person right now. Like he's been through this before.
この後に及んで陰謀論だと言い張るのか。君も見ただろう。あの黒服の外国人たちを。君の通うオフィスも寝泊まりしているホテルも荒らされた。クリスの自宅だって放火された。その放火事件の後、君の研究室に FBI を名乗る謎の男たちが調査に来た。前にホテルの駐車場で襲われたことだってもしかしたら関連があるかもしれない。普通なら絶対に遭遇しないような出来事が立て続けに起きている。これは偶然じゃない。
だからって国家規模だなんて。
The whole thing just seemed like too much of a stretch for her. Trying to connect every single event was a trap that conspiracy theorists often fell into. But in fact, most things that happened didn't really mean anything. When she began to tell him that, what he said next surprised her. Is he gonna say something like, "This isn't my first time dealing with this"?
事態はこの先、
Okay.
ジョン・タイターの予言通りに進むだろう。
ジョン・タイター？
Maho had never heard that name before.
10年前にアメリカのネット掲示板に現れた人物だよ。2036年からタイムマシンに乗ってやってきた。 自称未来人だ。俺はそいつが本物だと知っている。会ったこともある。ジョン・タイターによれば、2015年には第三次世界大戦が起きる。その原因はタイムマシンだ。
バカにしているの？
至って真面目だ。中鉢博士のことを知りたがっていたな。奴はクリスの父親だ。中鉢論文にはクリスが関わっていた可能性がある。
なんですって？
Is he eventually going to admit to the fact that he was there when Kirisu died? I mean, he's the cause of it, but... Maho had read Dr. Nakabachi's paper out of curiosity. Last summer, he'd proudly announced his paper on time travel to the entire world just before fleeing to Russia. The paper itself, however, was so poorly written that it was of no value whatsoever. She couldn't believe Kirisu might have been involved in writing it.
論文は劣化版で、もしもクリス自身が書いたオリジナルが存在するとしたら、クリスの残したノート PC とポータブルハードディスク、その中身が実際のところ何なのかは関係ない。ただそれを手に入れたがっている連中がいるんだ。
ちょっと待って、少し整理させて。
Could what Rintaro was saying be true? She took a moment to think. Normally, she wouldn't give something like this a second thought, but what had been happening around her lately just wasn't normal. She couldn't outright deny it. Besides, she was nursing a conspiracy theory of her own.
私もこの PC が狙われているかもしれないという予感はしていたのよ。ただ、あなたの話は私の予想とはあまりにもかけ離れすぎていて。
予想とは？
アマデウスの軍事転用のことじゃないかと考えていたの。
軍事転用？
クリスは精神生理学研究所にもよく出入りしていたんだけど、時々場違いな連中がそこにやってくるって言ってたの。
So this is the difference in the whole like the World War III thing that Suzawa was talking about. Is like before we met Maho, and like we didn't even know about the Amadeus thing, but it's interesting if in the world where Kirisu died, if they were working on this Amadeus thing, but we just never encountered Maho, so we just never knew about it. But it probably existed. But obviously in the Steins Gate one, Kirisu never died, so there was no need for it. Oh, well, actually, now that I think about it, I was like, who's to say that it probably still existed, but there would be no reason for Maho and Dr. Leskinen to come, and then, like, we encountered... And also the fact that Kirisu, like, she never mentioned anything about this AI work that she, as far as I know, like, she was working on this AI stuff, or she was aware of it, but she never mentioned it? I don't think she did anyway. Alright, Psychophysiology Lab, one of the labs at Victor University. While the Brain Science Institute attempts to understand the process behind thought and memory by examining the systems used by the brain itself, the Psychophysiology Lab's goals are more medical in nature. They develop new medical treatments by researching the biological and physical effects caused by the mind's workings. The lab's research covers a wide range of areas including perception, recognition, reflexes, learning, sleep, alcohol addiction, and schizophrenia.
どうも国防総省の人じゃないかって。
DoD, the United States Department of Defense. It is also known as the Pentagon due to the shape of its building, the building it's located in. It's America's most high-level defense agency, responsible for controlling the Army, Navy, and Air Force. I just had a funny thought about the DoD because here where I live, it's called the Department of National Defense. So it's like, so DND. And my husband, he's been kind of getting into Dungeons and Dragons lately because of people at work. So we were at my parents' place, and I said that Mark is interested in D&D, and my dad thought that he was interested in like joining the Department of National Defense. He's like, "Wow, that's really awesome." I was like, good for you. And my dad tends to kind of make fun of us, poke fun at my husband and I for being nerds. So I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting such a reaction. I was like, wait, Dad, D&D means Dungeons and Dragons. And my dad's like, oh, God damn it. He's just like, oh, you nerds.
アマデウスで人を殺せるのか。どうやって？
例えば百戦錬磨のパイロットから記憶データをコピーして無人戦闘機の制御に使うとか。
Interesting. Okay, so man, this is just a whole other can of worms on top of the whole thing with the time machine. Now we also have to think about the AI stuff. It's a lot. It's a lot to try and juggle all of this information.
あと以前話した医療への応用覚えてる？
人間の脳へ記憶データを書き戻すってやつかな。
そう。記憶データを修正した上で書き戻しが可能になれば、恐怖を感じない兵士やどんな非道な任務でも平然と遂行する部隊なんていう恐ろしいものまで作れてしまう。私はてっきりクリスがそういった実験の証拠を偶然知ってしまったんじゃないかと思っていたの。
なあ、アマデウスの研究には米軍が関与していたりはしないよな。
するわけないでしょ。
本当にそう言い切れるか。
Trying not to doubt Dr. Leskinen once again. I hope he's not a secret bad guy who's like secretly wanting to use Amadeus for purposes like this. Maybe that's why people are kind of like on Maho's trail, is like maybe he tipped them off or something, but he's working on the research too. He seems to be caught up in this, so it seems unlikely. Like he was almost shot at.
レスキネン教授だって軍に関与なんてさせないわ。
I hope not. I hope she's right.
だよな。
I hope he's not secretly like the big bad here, you know?
世界線？何のこと？
いや、忘れてくれ。俺の考えすぎだと思う。
He hadn't seemed like he'd really meant that, and that really bothered her. She wanted to hear more about John Titor, but he didn't tell her anything else. Since she couldn't crack the security on Kirisu's laptop and hard drive, it did Maho no good to carry them. And just like Rintaro said, those attackers scared her. So she decided she had no choice but to give them to him. He didn't tell her whether he was going to destroy them or not.
Maho, 無事でよかった。
When she arrived at their office in Wako City, Dr. Leskinen was already there. He came over and gave her a big hug. I like to believe he's just like, he's basically just dad professor, you know, professor dad, and she's like his little child, and Kirisu is like his little child, and he wants to look after them.
Oh, すまない。
She'd heard the office had been ransacked, but whatever had happened had already been cleaned up.
教授が片付けたんですか？
荒らされたと言っても、もともと私と魔法しか使っていなかったわけだし、荷物も多くなかったからね。あとは警察に任せてある。
2 days had passed since the office had been ransacked. Maho had spent both of them at Ferris's home, and only today had she gotten in touch with Dr. Leskinen and gone to Wako City to get her things. They were both going back tomorrow, just as planned. That meant they were saying goodbye to this office.
犯人は
I wouldn't get on
まだ
that
捕まっていないんです
plane.
よね。
ああ、
I'm sure they know that they're planning on going back to America, and probably know what plane they're going on. They're probably going to get
日
kidnapped.
本に来てから災難続きだな。
ですね。
The two of them looked around the empty office. It'd been a busy 2 months.
魔法はどうだったかな。日本はもう一つの故郷でもあるわけだろ。 感想は？
早く大学に戻って研究に打ち込みたいですね。この2ヶ月資料をまとめてばかりだった気がするので。
魔法は真面目だね。
それとクリスが最後の時間を過ごしたこの国の空気を感じることができたのは良かったです。
魔法。
But she still hadn't figured out why Kirisu had died. Actually, she had even more questions now. It bothered her to go home with so many questions left unanswered. If only Rintaro had told her everything he knew.
そういえば
The thought suddenly occurred to Maho.
アマデウスのテスターの件はどうします？
Of course, she meant Rintaro Okabe. If both Maho and Leskinen were heading back to America, that meant his time as a tester was over.
そうだね。
For some reason, the professor was taking a moment to think it over. She wondered what there was to think about.
テストはこのまま続けてもらおうと思っているんだが。
I wonder if Leskinen, except Maho was the one who met him. Like, he didn't seek out Okabe. It just seemed to be kind of like a chance experience or a chance encounter that he got brought into this. But I'd be like, if he seeked him out on purpose to, like, get information about Kirisu, maybe it was because, you know, someone wants to get into the laptops. They're like, well, if we find out more information about Kirisu, maybe we can get a hint into, like, what the password is.
本気ですか？
実際、リンタロウと話すことで、クリスはこれまでにないような反応をして見せているだろう。今後は彼だけでなく、もっと多くのテスターを使っていきたいとも考えているところだし。
セキュリティの面で不安があるのでは？アメリカと日本だと離れすぎていて、何かトラブルが起きた時に対処できません。
大丈夫さ。私はリンタロウを信じているからね。
いや、信じるとか信じないという話ではなくてですね。
それにテストを継続すれば、魔法だって定期的にリンタロウと連絡を取れるよ。
私は関係ないでしょ。
It's like everybody's trying to set the two of them up together.
そうかい？
そうですよ。
では今後のリンタロウとの連絡は私が直接取ることにしよう。
別に構いませんよ。
It still seemed like he wasn't telling her something, but she was too embarrassed to question him further. It surprised her, though, that he was so focused on Rintaro. Right. I don't know, I'm starting to feel like there might be something more to him. Why am I saying I'm starting to? I've been feeling like this almost since the beginning. I'm like, God, this dude's suspicious. He seemed to have taken a real liking to him ever since they'd first met. Did he simply like the guy, or was it because he was Kirisu's friend? Or was it something else? I'm just waiting for the moment that, like, the shoe drops, and, like, he's so smiley all the time, and then he's gonna go into super serious, and then just be like, this was all planned from the beginning. She didn't know. The next day, Maho and Dr. Leskinen returned to America via Narita Airport just like they'd planned. Rintaro had come to see them off, and he was very surprised when Dr. Leskinen told him he could continue being a tester. And then half a year passed. Oh, wow, okay, we're really skipping ahead, so maybe we're coming to the end here. Okay, so half a year, so this is going to be when Suzuha is probably about to, like, have to leave. Victor University's grounds were dead quiet. It was after 11 p.m. Some of the labs worked all night and into the morning, so the place wasn't completely abandoned. But compared to daytime, it was quiet. The lights in the halls were off, and it was a little scary walking down them alone. Maho lived in the researchers' apartments next to the lab. She'd been thinking about so many things that night, her head felt like it was going to explode. Then she looked out the window and realized the lights were still on in the brain science lab. Dr. Leskinen must have been working late. She decided to put some coffee in a thermos and take it to him. Something bad's gonna happen to Maho. Something bad's gonna happen to her.
そもそもなんで私はタイムマシンの研究なんかに没頭しているのかしら。
Ever since she'd come back from Japan in January, she'd spent all her free time on it. Even she had to admit she was getting obsessed. Of course, since this wasn't something she could research in public, and since she couldn't let it interfere with her real job, she had to do it all of her own in her room at night. As a result, she was staying up late battling with physics textbooks, an unfamiliar subject for her. Exhaustion and lack of sleep were starting to get to her. The whole idea of a time machine was stupid. She still thought so, but she was surprised at how desperate she was getting. Maybe Maho is going to be kind of like Kirisu. She's going to be the one to be able to help us figure things out. What Okabe had said to her in Japan still stuck with her.
半ば論文にはクリスが関わっていた可能性がある。
Rintaro could have been lying, or wrong, or simply delusional, but part of her wanted to believe it was real. Of course, from what she'd seen of Dr. Nakabachi's paper, she didn't want to believe Kirisu was involved. It was just that bad. But...
論文は劣化版で、もしもクリス自身が書いたオリジナルが存在するとしたら。
If she could have written it off as a slim possibility, everything would have been so much easier. But it was just like her, she thought, to be unable to do that. I want to find out what Kirisu found. That desire was what drove her to action. But the more research she did, the harder it seemed. It was so hard she was starting to lose faith in what she wanted to believe. Her usual complex started weighing down on her.
クリス、私、やっぱりあなたにはなれない。
Kirisu was her dear friend, but at the same time she was starting to feel jealous, frustrated, and hateful. And when all those feelings started going around in her mind, there was no way she could focus on work. It was time to chat with Dr. Leskinen for a little, and then go to sleep. She headed over to the lab.
教授？
ん？いや、魔法。
Dr. Leskinen seemed surprised at her sudden visit, but he stood up from his chair and welcomed her.
どうしたんだい？こんな夜中に。
I was thinking she was going to walk in and he was going to be doing something like up to nefarious purposes.
子供はもう寝る時間だよ。
その言葉、そっくりそのままお返しします。
ははは、違いない。
Dr. Leskinen laughed innocently, like a child at her cutting remark.
私の部屋から明かりが見えたものですから。これ、どうぞ。
The cup on Dr. Leskinen's desk was empty. She poured him some coffee from the thermos. It wasn't the sticky sweet cafe au lait that she liked. She'd made it straight black to match the professor's tastes. The room was filled with steam and a pleasant smell.
これは驚いた。魔法がカフェをご馳走してくれるとは。
私だってこのくらいの気は利きますよ。
でも君はこういうのが嫌いだっただろう？あれは確か君がこの研究所に来た最初の日だったかな。メリーがみんなにモーニングカフェを配って回っていたら、君はそれを断ってこう言ったじゃないか。
She's a little like me. I do not like coffee. I love coffee flavored things, and I love the smell of coffee. I wish I liked coffee, but I don't. My husband drinks coffee black, and I was like, ugh. If I do have to have coffee, it basically has, like she said, it's got to be super, like the, like cafe au lait. It's got to be like super sweet. Basically not taste like coffee anymore.
あなたはカフェを入れるためにここに勤務しているのですか？その時間があったら早く仕事を始めてはどうですとね。いやいや、すごい子が来たものだと驚かされたよ。
そんな古い話、今さら持ち出さなくてもいいじゃないですか。
Maho's cheeks swelled in embarrassment.
あの頃はその天才少女とか言われてちょっといい気になってたというか、何もわからない子供だったんです。
And then Kirisu knocked her down a peg. Like this girl who's younger than she is and smarter and more accomplished. Mary was another scientist at the lab. After Maho had apologized, they'd gone on to be friends.
教授は意地悪ですね。もう二度とコーヒーなんて持ってきませんから、そのつもりで。
Just as she was thinking of taking the coffee she'd poured back.
そうですよ、教授。あんまり先輩をいじめないであげてください。
She heard a voice from Dr. Leskinen's computer.
あら、クリス。
はい、私です。
ちょうど彼女のプログラムの検証中だったんだ。
She moved around to where she could see the monitor, and sure enough, the Kirisu CG model was displayed on it.
こんばんは、先輩。
こんな時間までご苦労様。
Maho chuckled to herself. Kirisu was just a program running on a computer, but she still couldn't stop herself from saying things like that. After all the time they'd spent together, Kirisu was no different than a human to her.
別に私は魔法をいじめてるわけじゃないよ。メアレイとの件だって私は魔法を好ましく思ったものさ。極めて合理的でクールで、しかも面白い子だとね。だから私の助手になってもらったわけだし。もちろん今の優しい君も嫌いじゃないけどね。
Dr. Leskinen gave her a wink as he reached for his coffee cup.
ありがとう。いただくよ。
As he drank his coffee, he grabbed the corners of his eyelids and gave them a little massage. He was acting cheerful, but evidently he was really tired.
プログラムの検証って何をしていたんです？
ああ、今まとめている論文のあれだよ。
アマデウスが嘘をつくメカニズムですか？
その部分のプログラムが解析できると、人間が嘘をつく仕組みももっと詳しくわかるんだがね。
女性の嘘は時に重大な秘密を含んでいます。それを暴こうというのは感心しません。
I wonder if that's going to be a factor, as well as the fact that this AI can lie. They mentioned that about how they can be intentionally, deceptive. Or deceptive? I think I mixed up deceitful and deceptive. Kirisu's expression was deadly serious.
何も君の嘘を暴こうって言うんじゃない。嘘をつく時の思考の過程を知りたいだけだよ。
まあいいです。何か暴露する羽目になったら、まず真帆先輩が隠してる甘い秘密を喋ることにしますから。
ちょっとおかしなことを言わないでちょうだい。っていうか、甘い秘密って何？
なんでしょうね。
She played dumb. Sometimes Kirisu liked to joke around. It was infuriating and at the same time kind of cute.
例えばゲームセンターで彼に取ってもらったぬいぐるみの件、私が気づいていないとでも？
は？
The first thing she thought of when she heard the word arcade was what happened back in Akihabara, Japan. She tried so many times to get the stuffed animal and failed each time. Rintaro had won it easily and given it to her.
あれが何？
ずっと先輩のベッドに置いてあるんですよね。
Hey, you were supposed to give that to Kirisu's mom. She's just holding on to it.
ことを言っているの。あれはクリスのお母さんへのお土産よ。
Or is that an example of a lie?
先輩の部屋に？
だってお母さんは
Okay.
新しい家をまだ探してるって言うし、それまでは仮のアパートメント住まいだし、引っ越しの時の荷物になったらあれかなと思って。
本当ですか？
本当よ。
She's like, are you lying right now, Maho? A woman's secrets?
あのぬいぐるみは私にとってもクリスの大事な思い出なんですもの。抱いて寝るのがそんなにおかしい？
やっぱり先輩のベッドにあるんですね、あれ。しかも抱いて寝てるなんてとってもキュート。そのあたりもっと詳しく教えてください。
That stupid computer program had tricked her. By the time she realized, it was already too late. Both Kirisu and Dr. Leskinen, who'd been listening the whole time, were smiling at her. She glared at them, her cheeks flushed.
これはどうやらクリスの勝ちのようだね。
勝ち負けとか関係ありません。もう私は寝ます。おやすみなさい。
She turned to leave Dr. Leskinen's office, fuming, but before she could leave, Kirisu got in one final parting shot.
先輩、もう1週間も岡部と連絡取ってませんよ。忙しいからといって連絡をおろそかにしていると後で後悔しちゃいますからね。
あのね、どうしてもあなたは私と岡部さんをくっつけたいの？
Maho stormed over to the monitor, but Kirisu seemed unconcerned.
たまには直接会ってみたいなって思ったりしませんか？
思いません。
そうか、残念だな。
For some reason, Dr. Leskinen shook his head sadly.
近々また共同研究で日本に呼ばれているんだ。その時、リンタロウに連絡を取ってみようと思っているんだ。魔法も一緒に連れて行こうかどうか悩んでいたんだが、これはやめた方が良さそうだね。
She'd heard nothing about this. Most of the time, whenever the professor had a project coming up, she'd hear about it through the school's network ahead of time.
日本へまた行くんですか？
うん。
She had to stop herself from immediately saying she wanted to go too. If she did, Dr. Leskinen and Kirisu would make fun of her again. But she didn't want to miss this chance. There was still a lot she needed to do in Japan. More than anything, she wanted to talk to Rintaro in person. About the time machine, and about Kirisu. It definitely was not because she just liked talking to him.
ぜひ私も連れて行ってください。
In the end, she gave in.
おお、ついに素直になったんだね。
では告白プランを考えましょう。
あなたたちね。
Maho was starting to get tired of dealing with them.
ま、冗談はさておき。君を連れて行けるかどうかは微妙なところなんだ。
というと？
君は日本でいろいろな事件に巻き込まれたろう。脳科学研究所としてはそのことをかなり気にしていてね。
そんな。
クリスの件もあったし、優秀な人材をこれ以上危険な目に遭わせるわけにいけないというのが理事たちの考えなんだよ。
私なら大丈夫です。現にこうして無事でいるじゃないですか。
ほう、つまり魔法はそこまでして日本にいるリンタロウに会いたいと。
いい加減セクハラになりますよ。
おお、それは勘弁してくれ。
でも本気で交際を検討してみては。将来的には岡部もこっちに来る可能性があるんでしょ。だったら今のうちに唾を
It's kind of sad. I know that Kirisu is just an AI program, but I wonder if Maho understands that there was something more to the relationship between Kirisu and Okabe than just a friendship. And it's kind of sad that Kirisu, loved him, but obviously this AI didn't know about any of the stuff that happened in the other world line. So it's just the idea of her trying to set up Okabe when Okabe is still, in love with Kirisu is kind of sad.
おせっかいな親戚のおばさんみたいなことを言うのはやめなさい。
魔法の考えは理解したよ。私からも理事に話をしてみよう。ただし、だからといって日本に行けるという保証はできないからね。
はい、ありがとうございます。
私は結構本気なんですけどね。
まだ言っているの？まったく。
It really felt like she was just talking to Kirisu. The feeling was much stronger than when they'd first started on Amadeus, and that reminded her of something she'd almost done many times but stopped.
このクリスに タイムマシンのことを相談してみたらどうだろう。
She didn't know if Kirisu had completed the time machine theory before her death, but if she had, some clues to it might be hidden in Kirisu's memories. Of course, she couldn't ask her in front of Dr. Leskinen, and she couldn't let others hear that she was making a time machine. If the rest of the lab found out, they'd make fun of her for sure. It wasn't even her field of research to begin with.
それじゃあ教授、そろそろ部屋に戻って寝ます。
Maho took her thermos and was about to leave the lab.
あ、ちょっと待った。最近、魔法の記憶データを全く更新していないだろう？
Oh yeah, that's right, Maho. There's a Maho one there too. We were so fixated on Kirisu.
あ、
So, oh, that's bad, because, like, that Maho is gonna have all of these memories of, like, everything that happened with, you know, Rintaro and people coming after her and her knowledge of the time machine.
日本に行く前に採取したデータが最後じゃないか？
それはですね。
Maho didn't know what to say. He was right.
その日本ではいろいろと怖い体験をしましたし、アマデウスに悪い記憶を残すこともないかなと。
気持ちはわかるが、このままだと比較実験ができない。
A comparison trial involved loading memories from both before and after a given experience into Amadeus and seeing how it changed. These trials allowed them to see what effects experiences and knowledge had on the brain, but after Kirisu's passing, they became solely Maho's responsibility.
今の君とアマデウスの魔法とでは、あまりにも記憶が食い違いすぎていて、別人と言ってもいいほどになってしまっている。
はい、そうですね。
このままだと、君をこのプロジェクトから外して、他の誰かに頼まなくてはならないかもしれないよ。
それは。
Her expression darkened.
クリスばかり相手にしていないで、たまには自分も構ってあげなさい。きっと寂しがっている。明日必ず記憶の更新をしておくように。いいね？
わかりました。
Maho nodded her head and left the room. A reason she'd given to Dr. Leskinen for not updating Maho's memories was a real concern, but there was also another one. Rintaro's words.
なあ、アマデウスの研究には米軍が関与していたりはしないよな。
She had no proof, but she couldn't get his words out of her mind. Was some great power involved in the Amadeus research? Something so powerful it was outside even Dr. Leskinen's control. If she updated her memory data, Maho would learn about Kirisu's laptop and hard disk. She trusted Amadeus, but that would mean whoever was secretly trying to use the project for their own ends would find out. It seemed silly, almost delusional to be worried about something like that, but she couldn't get it out of her mind ever since she'd come back to America. Now that's definitely going to be a problem if eventually she could crack through the laptop and read what's in there. As of now, she doesn't have that knowledge, and she gave it to Okabe, so she doesn't know anything that's in there, but still.
でもやっぱり考えすぎよね。
She whispered to herself.
誰かそこにいるの？
Oh. She heard a woman's voice from down the dark hallway. I wonder if that might be... I'm waiting for, what's her name, Kagari, to make an appearance. I'm sure she's going to show up. This might be her. Maho stopped dead in her tracks. The hallway lights flipped on, and she saw a group of men and women coming down the corridor that connected her building to the next one. The next building over was the psychophysiology lab. Maho's brain science lab mostly investigated the workings of the brain itself. The psychophysiology lab, on the other hand, was more of a medical department. They looked at how the workings of the brain affected mental states and mental illness.
すみません、 比叡城真帆です。レスキネン教授の研究室の。
The woman at the head of the group was someone she knew. Oh, it was Dr. Reyes, a scientist at the psychophysiology lab.
あら、真帆だったの。
レイエス教授、こんな時間にお仕事ですか？
あなたも？
ええ、まあ。
お互いに仕事中毒だわね。
Judy Reyes' eyes narrowed between her glasses, or beneath her glasses, as she laughed.
アレクシスは？まだ自分のオフィスよね。
はい。
Oh, they're coming for him. They're coming for him, I feel like.
ほんとご執心ね。自分の娘と勘違いしてるんじゃないかしら。
Or maybe they said a group of men, so maybe they say that they're the FBI and they want access to the psychophysiology lab.
こんな時間にレスキネン教授にお会いになるんですか？
Something's going on here.
もし
Something's
緊急での
happening.
ミーティングなら私も。
その必要はないわ。私の研究に少し問題があってね。
Oh, okay. Nope, they're going to go see Dr. Leskinen. He's going to get kidnapped. He's going to get killed. Something's going to happen to him.
あなたがいても特に頼めることはないでしょうし。あ、気を悪くしないでね。でも、ありがとう。
Dr. Reyes kept smiling as she walked past Maho towards the lab. The other scientists followed her.
研究に問題って一体何だろう？
She took a closer look and saw she didn't recognize one of the people in the group. It was hard to say why exactly she noticed him. He just didn't look like a scientist. When you spend enough time doing research, you start to get a feel for people who are in the same line of work. But he had a totally different air about him. And what was worse, he was behaving extremely rudely towards Dr. Reyes. If he was one of her staff, he wouldn't act like that. And while everyone else was wearing white lab coats, he was wearing a freshly pressed suit. It just didn't feel right. She was about to head back to her room when... It bothered her enough. She turned right back around and silently crept back to Dr. Leskinen's lab. The door was slightly ajar. She could hear voices inside. She knew it was wrong, but she decided to push her face up against the door to listen. Oh, it's like he's staring right at me. It's so creepy. How long are you going to let him hang on to it? You must be talking about Rintaro with Amadeus.
貴重な情報源だ。下手に動いて破棄でもされたらもったいないだろう。
See, even his voice sounds different. I was right.
いずれにせよ。
Look at that face. Yes.
そこで回収するつもりさ。
Yes. Ah, it's nice to know that I'm validated. I was thinking, I was like, he seems too nice. And he seemed way too focused on Rintaro. There's something up with this guy.
なぜ半年近くも様子を見たのか、納得のいく説明ができるのかしら。
彼らは我々が知っていること以上の何かを隠しているような気がしてね。
And I hate to say it too, it was his name. It was the fact it was like a Russian name. The Russians are involved. I'm like, there's something going on here. He's suspicious.
そこでアマデウスを使って聞き出そうとしたんだが、かなり警戒心が強い慎重な青年だよ、リンターロ・岡部は。
真帆にお得意の施術でもしてあげたら？
彼女は何も知らないと思うがね。
Special treatment. Maho started to panic when she heard her name. And then she realized she'd made a big mistake. She was so focused on listening to the conversation that she'd pressed her shoulder into the door. The door to the lab wasn't very well built. There was a loud creak, and everyone in the lab turned around.
誰?
She knew she should probably run, but her body refused to move. She couldn't understand what she was hearing, and even after they found her, she still couldn't move. She couldn't believe it. She didn't want to believe it. This was worse than being in a thriller, she thought. The other scientists who were with Dr. Reyes grabbed her arms tightly and dragged her into the room.
教授、今の話は一体。
Dr. Leskinen looked a little sad as he walked over to her. His huge body leaned forward and peered into her face.
やれやれ、聞いてしまったんだね。 まあちょうどいい。魔法、さっきの日本行きの話だけどね、やはり君にも一緒に来てもらおう。
She didn't know what he meant. Weren't the directors opposed to it? Was it something Dr. Leskinen could decide on his own? What was good timing? Confused, she glanced over at the computer screen, but Kirisu was no longer there. The one thing she knew was... Okabe's words weren't the ramblings of a conspiracy theorist after all. Alright, well that was a really good episode. Like, things are starting to click now. Like, it feels like this is the... I know I've said this multiple times, but this is the thing where it's like, oh, the oh shit episode, I feel like. I'm so happy I got my confirmation that my suspicions about Dr. Leskinen were confirmed. I'm a little sad about that because he seemed like, you know, a nice character, and I was like, he's almost too nice. There's something up with this guy. And I'm right, and I feel proud of that, but also a little bummed out that the characters got played. And now Maho's involved in this. She's kind of being forced to come back to Japan and I guess try and get more information out of Okabe, especially I'm assuming that, like, that's the reason that Leskinen also wanted Maho to put her memories into her AI, was because they're like, maybe Maho knows something because she's been hanging out with Okabe too, so maybe she knows more than she's letting on. So we are, like, coming to... I assume we're going to be coming to the end of this soon because there is the time limit. Like, Suzaha has to go back. She said that she can't stay more than 6 months. It's pretty much at that point now. Maho and Dr. Leskinen are coming back to Japan to meet up with Okabe. He has no idea that Dr. Leskinen's behind it. Maho has her suspicions, but she still kind of seems in denial about stuff. So I don't know how this route's going to wrap up, but I'm very interested to see. I don't know if it's going to be finishing next episode. It might be a little bit longer than that, but I'm really excited to see, with kind of everything coming to a head, what's going to happen. So yeah, hopefully you guys liked this episode as much as I did. I really liked this one. Like, there wasn't really too much action, but like it felt like a thriller. It was really cool. Just having kind of the pieces come together. So yeah, hopefully you guys liked this episode. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned next time for part 8. Until then, bye. Special shoutouts to my top tier patrons: Emily Hornsby, Zorn Ether, Revealing Storm, Asborn Kennedy, Icognito, Harry Gazif, and Jared Fan.